Commander Tailvox floated in his command chamber, his 6 crystalline eyes focused on the small blue planet below. His ship, the Divine Order, was one of 12 vessels in the Galactic Hegemony's exploration fleet. For 10,000 years. His people had brought order to the galaxy, guided by their crystal lords, who whispered wisdom from dimensions beyond mortal understanding. "Sir, the energy readings are unusual," said his aide, Velanoth. The 4-armed Cathari warrior shifted, nervously, his weapon hands twitching with instinct. "The planet shows divine signatures, but they're scattered. It's chaotic. It doesn't match any pattern we've seen." Tailvox extended one crystalline finger toward the holographic display. Streams of data flowed like liquid light, showing the spiritual resonance of the world below. Every civilized species in the galaxy had one clear divine connection. The Nexari served the Crystal Lords. The Cathari followed their 4-armed war god. The Void Singers worshipped the shadow entities. One people, one pantheon, one clear path to enlightenment. But this planet called Earth showed something impossible. The primitive humans living there had stories and beliefs that matched dozens of real divine entities from across the galaxy. Their Greek gods were similar to the astral lords of Kepler 4 for 2b. Their Norse mythology resembled the storm fathers of the Outer Rim. Their Egyptian pantheon was almost identical to the Death Kings of the Cygnus sector. How can they know about so many divine entities? Velanoth asked, his forearms crossed in confusion. They haven't left their solar system. They shouldn't know about any gods except local ones. Tailvox studied the readings more carefully. The humans weren't just telling stories. Their genetic patterns showed traces of divine connection to multiple sources. This should have been impossible. When a species bonded with divine entities, they chose one pantheon and served it completely. Mixing divine influences led to madness and death. They must be copying, he decided. Primitive minds creating fantasy stories that accidentally match real divine patterns. We'll fix this. We'll teach them proper worship. On the surface of Earth, Dr. Kim Hoon worked alone in his laboratory at Seoul National University. Books covered every surface, written in languages from around the world. Ancient Greek texts sat next to Korean historical records. Norse sagas were stacked beside Egyptian hieroglyph translations. Chinese mythology mixed with Indian religious texts. Kim Hoon had spent 15 years studying comparative mythology, driven by a feeling he couldn't explain. All human cultures had stories about gods and heroes, but the stories were too similar. Different cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, told the same basic tales with different names. He picked up a tablet showing Greek stories about Zeus, then compared it to Korean myths about the Heavenly Emperor. The patterns were identical. The details matched too closely to be coincidence. There has to be a connection, he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. These stories came from somewhere real. His computer chimed with a news alert. Strange lights had been seen in the sky over major cities worldwide. Government officials were calling emergency meetings. Social media was exploding with videos of silver objects moving through the atmosphere. Kim Hoon walked to his window and looked up at the Seoul skyline. In the distance, a bright star was growing larger. It wasn't moving like a normal aircraft. It was descending straight down like a falling angel, 300 kilometers south in Busan. College student Park Min was getting ready for her morning classes. She lived in a tiny apartment near Busan National University, studying international relations and dreaming of a career in diplomacy. Her grandmother's old Buddhist altar sat in the corner. Next to pictures of family members who had died decades ago, Park Min had always felt connected to old stories. Her grandmother used to tell her tales about Mago, the great goddess who created Korea from clay and starlight, about mountain spirits who protected villages, about dragons who lived in the Eastern Sea and controlled the weather. The stories felt real to her in a way that modern life didn't. When she meditated at the altar, she sometimes felt presences around her, whispers in languages she didn't recognize, warmth that came from nowhere. Her phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Unknown aircraft over major cities. Government officials ordering people to stay indoors. Video footage of massive silver ships descending from space. Park Min looked out her window at Bizen's harbor. A ship was hovering above the water, silent and beautiful. It looked like a crystal cathedral floating in the sky. She felt something stir in her chest, like her grandmother's stories were suddenly becoming real. In Tokyo, office worker Lee Jun was finishing his late shift at a translation company. He was Korean, but had lived in Japan for 5 years, working to support his family back home. The job was boring but steady, translating technical documents from Japanese to Korean. Lee Jun had always been interested in old stories. His favorite childhood books were about Korean heroes and gods. Dangun, the legendary founder of Korea. Wanung, the divine prince who came down from heaven. The dragon kings who controlled the seas, his computer screen filled with news alerts. First contact. Alien ships. Government emergency broadcasts. Lee Jun looked out the office window at Tokyo's glittering skyline. In the distance, something was descending from the stars, far to the south. In rural Jeolla province, farmer Choi Don was working in his rice fields when the sky began to change. He was a simple man who had worked the same land his whole life, following the seasons and trusting in the mountain spirits his ancestors had worshipped for generations. Choi Don felt the earth trembling beneath his feet. Not an earthquake, but something deeper. The mountain spirits were stirring. Old gods were waking up. Above him, silver ships descended like stars falling to earth. The age of legends was about to begin. The silver ships came down from the sky like falling stars. They were beautiful and terrible, shaped like crystals and moving without sound. People all over Earth stopped what they were doing and looked up. Cars stopped in the middle of roads. Workers left their offices. Children pointed at the sky and asked their parents what was happening. Within 3 hours, every television, computer, and phone on Earth showed the same message. The words appeared in perfect Korean, English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and every other language people spoke. The voice that read the message was calm and musical, like wind chimes made of metal. Greetings, children of Earth. We are the Galactic Hegemony. We have traveled far to reach you. We come to guide you toward enlightenment. Do not be afraid. We are here to help you grow. In Seoul, Kim Hyun was rushing through the airport when the message appeared on every screen around him. He stopped walking and stared. The words were perfect Korean, but something about them felt wrong. Too perfect, too clean. Like a machine had learned the language but missed something important about how real people talked. His phone rang. Was the Korean government. They needed him in New York immediately. The United Nations was calling an emergency meeting, and they needed experts in mythology and ancient languages. Within 6 hours, Kim Hoyan was on a plane to America, still not believing what was happening. The UN building in New York was chaos. Diplomats from every country were shouting in different languages. Military officers were making plans. Scientists were studying data from the alien ships. Kim Hain was given a badge that said, Cultural Advisor, and told to sit in the main assembly hall. When the aliens entered the room, everyone went quiet. Commander Tailvox was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. His skin caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. His voice sounded like singing glass when he spoke. Humans of Earth, he said, we have studied your planet for many cycles. See that you have spiritual beliefs, but they are confused and primitive. You worship many different gods, but this is wrong. Each species in the galaxy serves one pantheon of divine beings. This brings order and peace. Kim Haeon felt anger building in his chest. The alien was talking about human religions like they were toys that children needed to put away. Your mythologies are children's tales, Commander Tailvox continued. Stories about Greek gods, Norse warriors, Egyptian pharaohs, Korean mountain spirits. These are fantasies. We will teach you to worship true gods, as civilized species do. You will choose one pantheon and serve it properly. The room was silent. World leaders looked at each other, not sure what to say. Some nodded, thinking this might be reasonable. Others looked angry but stayed quiet. Kim Hyun couldn't stay quiet. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory, telling him stories about Wanung, the divine prince who came down from heaven to teach humans how to live. She had always said the old stories were more than just stories without thinking. Kim Hoyan stood up and whispered the prayer his grandmother had taught him. Words came out in ancient Korean, the language of ceremonies and sacred things. Wanong, divine Prince of Heaven, you who came down to rule with wisdom and justice, grant me the sight to see truth and the courage to speak it. The moment the words left his mouth, something impossible happened. Golden light exploded from Kim Hyan's body. Not harsh light that hurt the eyes, but warm light like sunrise. Everyone in the room felt it wash over them. The alien commander stepped back, his crystal skin flashing with sudden color. Kim Hyun felt his mind expand. Knowledge poured into him. Like water into a cup, he could suddenly understand languages he had never studied. He could see patterns in the aliens' words that revealed their real intentions. These beings hadn't come to help humanity. They had come to control them. "You're wrong, Kim," Hyun said, and his voice carried strange music that made everyone listen. "Our gods are not tales. They simply haven't awakened yet." 300 kilometers away in Busan, Park Min was watching the broadcast on her laptop. In her tiny apartment, she saw the alien commander dismiss human beliefs as primitive nonsense. She saw world leaders sitting quietly accepting the insults. Anger filled her heart. Her grandmother had died believing in Mago, the great goddess, who created Korea from earth and starlight. Her grandmother's faith had been real and powerful, not some primitive superstition. Park Min pressed her hands together in prayer position and whispered to Mago in the old words her grandmother had taught her. "Great Mother, First Creator, you who shaped the world with your hands, show them that we are not forgotten children. Show them that we remember." Power exploded through Park Min's small body. Her television screen cracked down the middle. But more than that, everyone in her apartment building suddenly saw the same vision. A great goddess, beautiful and terrible, weaving reality like cloth on a cosmic loom. Her eyes burned with protective fury for her human children. In rural Jeolla Province, farmer Choi Don was working in his rice fields when he felt the earth tremble. Not an earthquake, but something deeper. The mountain spirits were stirring. He knelt in the mud and spoke to them in the dialect his grandfather had used. "Mountain kings, protectors of the land, the sky people have come. They say you are not real, but I know you are here. I feel you in the earth." The mountains themselves seemed to answer. Ancient voices whispered in his mind, telling him secrets about the true nature of gods and humans. In Tokyo, office worker Lee Jun felt the dragon. Kings of the East Sea, calling to him from across the water. Their voices were like ocean waves, old and powerful and patient. All across Earth, something was awakening. The aliens had expected to find primitive humans with simple beliefs. Instead, they had triggered something they didn't understand. Commander. Tailvox felt his crystal lords stirring uneasily in the depths of space. Their voices, usually calm and orderly, were filled with worry. "What have we found?" he whispered to himself. Watching the golden light still glowing around the human who had challenged him, something was very wrong with this. Primitive world, 3 days after the aliens arrived, Earth had become a place of miracles and confusion. Kim Hyan sat in the UN conference room, but everything had changed. The room itself felt alive now, humming with invisible energy that made the walls shimmer like water. The air tasted of lightning and ancient incense. Across the table, the alien diplomats looked worried. Commander Tailvox's crystal skin was flashing colors that Kim Hyan somehow knew meant fear. The four-armed Cathari warrior Velanoth kept reaching for weapons that weren't there. His instincts telling him danger was near, but unable to identify what kind behind. Kim Hyun stood Park Min. The college student from Busan had changed in 3 days. Her eyes now held depths that seemed older than mountains. When she looked at the aliens, she could see through their words to their true thoughts. The goddess Mago whispered secrets in her mind, revealing lies before they were even spoken. "This should not be possible," Velanoth said, his forearms gesturing frantically. "No species in galactic history has ever bonded with multiple pantheons. The divine energies should tear you apart. Your gods should be fighting each other for control." Kim Hyun smiled and golden light flickered behind his eyes. Maybe your gods fight each other, he said. Ours seem to get along just fine. The truth was stranger than the aliens could imagine. All across Earth, humans were connecting with gods from every mythology they had ever known. But instead of the chaos and destruction the aliens expected, something beautiful was happening. In Seoul, a businessman named Han Woo had been working late when the awakening hit him. He felt the presence of King Sejong the Great, the wise ruler who had created the Korean alphabet centuries ago. Suddenly, Han Woo could create new languages in his mind, perfect systems of communication that helped awakened humans around the world talk to each other. On Jeju Island, an elderly woman named Kim Soon was caring for refugees who had fled the cities in panic. When she prayed to Seomande, the goddess of the island's great mountain, power flowed through her aged body. She lifted boulders the size of cars with her bare hands, building shelters for the frightened people who had nowhere else to go. But the most amazing case was still Choi Dan. The simple farmer from Jeolla Province, Kim Hae-on, watched the video call on his phone. Though the camera had trouble showing Choi Dan clearly, the farmer glowed with soft light that seemed to come from inside his skin. His rice fields behind him grew in impossible colors: blue grain, silver stalks, golden leaves that sang in the wind. I don't understand what's happening to me, Choi, Dan said, his voice carrying echoes of thunder and flowing water. It started with just our mountain king, blessing my crops like my grandfather taught me. But then yesterday, I felt others calling. What others? Kim Hen asked. Greek gods, Norse gods, Egyptian gods, Hindu gods? All of them. They're all here. All willing to help. All. Choi Dan held up his hand and tiny flames danced between his fingers. Prometheus gave me fire.
Ah!
Thor blessed my hammer. Thoth showed me how to read the growing patterns in the earth. They're not fighting each other. They're happy to meet. The alien fleet in orbit was detecting energy readings that broke their instruments. Divine signatures were appearing all over Earth, but not the single, clean patterns they expected. These were complex weaves of multiple pantheons working together. Something their science said was impossible. A Nexery technician approached.
Oh.
Commander Tailvox, with a report that made the crystal being's skin flash bright red with alarm, sir. We've analyzed the divine patterns. Humans aren't connecting to random gods. They're accessing the original source codes, the base patterns that our own deities are copies of. That's impossible, Tailvox said. The original pantheons were contained eons ago. Apparently not, sir. In Tokyo, Lee Jun was having his own revelations. The office worker had been blessed by the dragon kings of the East Sea, but their wisdom came with disturbing knowledge. Lee Jun spent his nights reading through alien databases that he somehow could access now. Learning the true history of the galaxy, he called Kim Hae-on with news that changed everything. They're not the first, Lee Jun said, his voice carrying the authority of ancient scholars and the strategic insight of war gods. The aliens, I mean. They're not the original divine species. They're second generation. There were others before. Them, others, who had access to what we're experiencing now. What happened to the first generation? Kim Hae-on asked. That's what I'm trying to figure out, but the patterns suggest they didn't disappear. They scattered, hid themselves. Maybe they're still out there. Min was getting her own answers through different means. She closed her eyes and let Mago's ancient memories flow through her consciousness. The great goddess had been present at the creation of more than just Korea. She had witnessed the birth of galaxies, the first contact between mortals and divine beings, the rise and fall of cosmic empires. What Parkman saw in those memories made her gasp and open her eyes wide. Kim Hae-on, she whispered. I know what we are. What do you mean? The aliens. They're not advanced beings who found primitive humans. They're our descendants. Distant colonies that forgot their origins. Parkman's voice grew stronger as Magos. Memories became clearer. Thousands of years ago, humans left Earth and spread across the galaxy. Somewhere along the way, they lost their connection to the original divine sources. They developed limited, single pantheon worship because they forgot how to handle the full spectrum. The conference room went silent. Even the aliens stopped moving. We're not primitive humans meeting advanced aliens, Parkman continued. The parents meeting our own lost children who don't remember where they came from? Commander Tailvox's crystal skin went completely white. The gods were awakening, and they were coming home. Kim Hen sat alone in his hotel room in New York, but he was not really alone. The voices of gods whispered around him like a gentle wind. Wanong, the divine Prince of Heaven, spoke in ancient Korean. Thor's deep laughter echoed from Norse halls. Thoth shared Egyptian wisdom about the nature of memory and time. They were all there, all waiting. Kim Hoon closed his eyes and let their voices guide him deeper into meditation. He felt his consciousness expand beyond his body, beyond the room, beyond Earth itself. In that expanded state, he touched something he had never felt before, memories that were not his own, but belonged to his species. The memories came like a flood of light and sound and feeling. He saw Earth not as humanity's birth world, but as their hiding place. He saw vast cities among the stars, built by beings who looked human, but commanded powers that could reshape reality. He saw partnerships between mortals and gods that made both stronger than either could be alone. When Kim Haeon opened his eyes, tears were streaming down his face. He knew the truth now, and it was more incredible than any story ever told. The next morning, Kim Haeon called an emergency meeting of human leaders and alien diplomats. The UN Assembly Hall was packed with people from every country on Earth, plus the crystal beings and four-armed warriors who had come from the stars. I have something to tell you, Kim Haeon said, standing before them all. Something about who we really are. The room went quiet. Kim Haeon could feel the god standing beside him, invisible but present, lending him strength. Earth is not humanity's birth world, he began. It's our sanctuary. 50,000 years ago, the species you call humans ruled a galactic empire. We called ourselves the Primarchs. We were the first species to discover something revolutionary. We could form partnerships with divine entities from across dimensional boundaries. Commander Tailvox's crystal skin flashed with alarm. That's impossible. No species can handle multiple divine connections. We could, Kim Haeon said simply. We weren't servants of the gods. We were their partners. The gods gained physical anchors in reality, and we gained access to powers beyond imagination. Together, we built wonders that your current empire cannot even dream of. Parkman stood up from her seat. The college student from Busan now carried herself like an ancient queen. When she spoke, it was with Mago's voice, deep and old and full of memory. The Primarch Empire didn't fall to war, she said. It fell to success. We grew so powerful that reality itself began to buckle under the strain. Stars were going out. Space was tearing. Time was breaking down. To save the universe, our ancestors made a terrible choice. What choice? Asked a human diplomat. They scattered themselves across hidden worlds throughout the galaxy. They sealed away their divine connections and went into hiding, waiting for the cosmos to heal itself. Earth was one of those hiding places, a sanctuary world where the refugees could live simple lives until it was safe to awaken again. The revelation hit the assembly hall like a thunderbolt. Humans stared at each other with new understanding. The aliens looked terrified. From his video screen, Choi Don spoke up. The simple farmer was glowing brighter now, surrounded by the presence of gods from every pantheon humanity had ever known. I can feel them, he said. All the divine beings working together inside me. Watch. Choi Dan held up his hands. In his left palm, a tiny sun appeared, burning with perfect order and harmony. In his right palm, a small storm cloud formed, crackling. With chaotic lightning, the two forces should have destroyed each other instantly. Instead, they danced together, creating patterns of light that were more beautiful than either could make alone. This is what human consciousness can do, Choi Dan said. We can make opposites work together. Order and chaos, creation and destruction, light and shadow. The gods don't fight when they're with us. They cooperate. Li Chen's voice came through. Another video connection from Tokyo. The office worker's eyes now held the wisdom of dragon kings and ancient scholars. I've been studying the alien databases all night, he said. The current galactic species, they're our colonial descendants. humans who left Earth thousands of years ago and spread across the galaxy. But somewhere along the way, they lost their connection to the divine partners. They forgot who they were. Over many generations, Li Jun continued, they developed limited single pantheon worship because they couldn't remember how to handle the full spectrum of divine power. They became pale echoes of what their ancestors once were. Commander Tailvox was listening with growing horror in his mind. The Crystal Lords of Order were no longer speaking with their usual calm authority. They were screaming warnings, finally. Recognizing what they faced, not primitive humans, but their own divine ancestors, awakening after eons of dormancy across the galaxy. The Galactic Hegemony fleet was receiving distress calls from every world in their empire. Local populations were experiencing spontaneous awakenings as humanity's return activated dormant, genetic memories buried in their DNA. The rigid divine hierarchies that had maintained galactic order for 10,000 years were crumbling as beings remembered their true heritage. "What do you want from us?" Commander Tailvox asked, his crystalline voice cracking with defeat. Kim Hyun stood up and smiled. For a moment, every god humanity had ever imagined seemed to smile with him. The air in the assembly hall shimmered with divine presence as ancient powers stirred back to life. "The same thing we always wanted," Kim Hyun said gently. "You'd go home. To take our children, all of you, back to the stars where we belong. Together this time, as partners with the divine, just like it was meant to be." The age of exile was ending. The gods were calling their people home. 6 months had passed since the silver ships first came to Earth, and the galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before. Parkman stood in the center of the Temple of All Pantheons, a building that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. The walls showed images of gods from every world in the galaxy, but they weren't separate anymore. Greek Zeus laughed with Korean mountain spirits. Egyptian Isis shared wisdom with Nexari crystal lords. Norse Thor arm wrestled with HFY War. Gods, and they were all having fun around Parkman. Children from dozens of different species played together on floors that felt like clouds, but held their weight like solid stone. A small Nexari child made of living crystal was building towers with a human boy from Seoul, too young. Cathari warriors with 4 arms each were playing catch with balls of pure light that giggled when they were thrown. "How do you make it work?" asked a teenage Cathari student, her 4 hands folded respectfully. "Our teachers say different gods should fight each other, but here they all seem happy." Parkman smiled, and for a moment the goddess Mago seemed to smile through her. "It's not that we're more powerful than your people," she explained gently. "It's that we remember something everyone forgot. Gods and mortals work best when they work together, not when one serves the other." The Cathari student nodded slowly, still confused but willing to learn. Behind her, other young aliens from across the galaxy listened carefully. They had come to Earth to study what humans called divine partnership, concept their species were just beginning to remember. Far away in rural Jela province, Choi Dan was back to doing what he loved most, farming, but his simple rice fields had become something extraordinary. The crops grew in colors that didn't exist in nature before humans awakened. Blue rice that tasted like starlight, silver corn that sang in the wind, golden vegetables that glowed softly in the darkness. Young beings from across the galaxy came to learn from the simple farmer who could channel the blessings of times. Cultural gods from 100 different worlds. A group of Nexari crystal children watched in wonder as Choi Dan showed them how to ask the earth spirits for help. "You don't command them," he explained, kneeling in the strange-colored dirt. "You ask nicely. You show respect. You work together." He placed his hands on the soil, and tiny flowers bloomed between his fingers. "The gods want to help. They just need to know you care about what you're growing." A young void singer normally, pale as starlight, giggled with delight as purple flowers sprouted around her dark feet. She had never seen plants respond to her presence before. Her people worshipped entities of living darkness, but here she learned that even shadow could help things grow, in the great city of New Geneva. Built where the old UN headquarters used to stand, Kim Hyun worked in his office as the first director of the Divine Concordance. The new galactic government was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of rigid rules and military force, it operated on principles of cooperation and mutual respect. Through his window, Kim Hyun could see ships arriving from across the galaxy. But these weren't the mechanical vessels that species used to. Build Lee Jun had worked with gods of craftsmanship and technology to create something new. Ships that moved through space by agreement between their crews and patron spirits. A Nexori trading vessel descended like a floating crystal cathedral, its movement guided by the harmony between its crystal crew and their geometric gods. Catharai warrior ship landed with the grace of a hunting bird, its four-armed crew working in perfect sync with their patron spirits of war and honor. "Sir," said his assistant, a young human woman blessed by Athena with perfect organizational skills. "The representatives from the Spiral Arm colonies have arrived for the monthly concordance meeting." Kim Haen nodded and stood up. Through his connection to Huanong and dozens of other divine beings, he could feel the excitement of gods across multiple dimensions. They were happy to be working together again after so many thousands of years of separation. The monthly meetings were celebrations as much as they were government sessions. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came together to share discoveries, solve problems, and learn from each other. Most importantly, they came to remember what it felt like to be part of something larger than themselves. On the streets of Seoul, former Commander Tailvox walked beside Kim Hyun like an old friend. The crystal being now served as Earth's ambassador to his own people, helping them adjust to their rediscovered heritage. His rigid crystal lords of order still whispered wisdom in his mind, but now they also laughed and told jokes and sometimes made beautiful but impractical things just for fun. "Look at that," Tailvox said, pointing with one crystalline finger at a playground where human and alien children played together. Little human girl was teaching Tailvox's own crystal-born son how to build sandcastles that sang with harmonic frequencies. The rigid order his people had worshipped for millennia was still there. But now it danced with chaos and creativity in patterns that created beauty beyond what either force could achieve alone. "You really are going home, aren't you?" Tailvox asked. Kim Hyun watched Park Min leading a group of mixed-species children in a prayer that somehow honored Mago, the Crystal Lords, the four-armed war god, and dozens of other deities, all at the same time. The children didn't think it was strange. To them, this was just how the universe worked. "We never left," Kim Hyun said softly. "We just forgot who we were for a while. But that's okay. Forgetting and remembering are both part of the cosmic dance." Above them, the sky shimmered with aurora patterns created by weather gods from different pantheons, having a friendly competition. Each was trying to create the most beautiful display while working together to keep Earth's climate stable and pleasant. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy with weapons or technology. They had reclaimed it by remembering something simple but profound, that divinity was not something to be feared or served, but something to be partnered with. In doing so, they had transformed not just themselves, but the very nature of existence. The gods were no longer legends told in ancient stories. They were family, and they were home.